So you have a tender rate and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big on the trace and some super glamping. One ideas, deep news and reviews, a podcast the first rate and here just for you. You don't have to think about it, join us and be about it. Something interesting we want to hear about it, come on let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints Podcast.
Sponsored by Midland, communication for every adventure. The industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MyMedic. Sponsored by Tembo Tusk. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DeMoss Collective, mission built and made for mobility. Sponsored by BrewTrek. Sponsored by Hard Impact Designs.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
What's up, Mike?
Oh, Phil, it's another good podcast this week, I think. We're both going to try to get through it, though, because my understanding is you guys probably can tell I'm having a little bit of a cold, I guess, left over from the flu. And now we think that maybe I gave it to Phil through Zoom. Now, I don't know how that works, but we're trying to figure that out.
Well, I know I'm a little congested. I've been coughing. I'm a little under the weather, too. But we're going to power through this. We got some good stuff to talk about, so it's not. Right. Don't feel that sad for us.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I want to talk to you about, because I sent you the article out. So let's get the attributions together first. I found an article in Outside Magazine, yep. And there's an opinion section on Outside Magazine's website called SUNDOG'S Almanac of Ethical Answers, and that's by Mark Sundeen. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. Sundeen. And I'll leave a link in the description. So basically, he gave his opinion on a reader's question, which was, why are we so annoyed by remote workers in Sprinter vans? And went on to write, a frustrated reader asked if we can prohibit Sprinter van telecommuters on their laptops in the great outdoors. So this is what they wrote. I was looping through a campground looking for a spot and found them not only full, no big surprise, but filled with Mercedes vans whose occupants were typing at laptops, buds in ears, even a few satellite thingies mounted on roofs. In other words, they were working. It felt so unfair that there were very limited numbers of sites which are maintained with our tax money for people on vacation. We're now subsidizing cheap rent for van life. Shouldn't telecommuters be banned from public campgrounds? Signed, Mom Against Douchery Drivers.
Oh, boy, this is going to be a good one, folks. Fasten your seatbelts and let's go.
So the article stuck out to bring onto the podcast, not because I agree or I disagree, but more big picture. And you take this however you want. But the reason I brought it up was there are many people who have a disdain toward vanlifers for a multitude of reasons. This is just one. So
that's right.
You could say whatever you like, but the question I'm posing is, why are vanlifers, in so many people's opinion, insufferable?
Oh, boy. This is my kind of topic, Phil. I love it. So it's interesting. That article, I read the whole thing, and the guy brings up a bunch of great points, of which, by the way, I think you and I have brought up on our podcast before. So let's talk about this. a couple things are going on here. First of all, this woman is writing about, people working from the road. I don't know that that's what this is really about. Okay. Because quite frankly, if you're paying for a campsite, whether you're on vacation or you're working in your van or you're, hiding from the law, I don't really care what the reason is. If you're paying, we're all equal, right? So who cares? And by the way, last time I checked, I didn't realize campsites were for people on vacation.
That killed me.
Yeah, really. But let's get straight into the hard hitting stuff here. One of the reasons people don't like Vanlifers, I'm just going to come out and say it. The culture has largely emanated, and this is not true at all, actually, but in people's heads, the culture has emanated out of California. People have it in their view that these people are, largely wealthy Californians, let's say, that have decided to go out and, hit the road and whatever. And I could tell you, and you and I have talked about this before, bar none, California is the least popular of the 50 states in the United States, period. End of story, period. Having traveled now for full-time on the road for 4 years, California is hated by the other 49 states just about blanketly. And by the way, even people down in Baja and in Mexico and everywhere else. And on top of that, I would wager a bet that, because I have a bunch of friends that are from California, some of which now have changed plates on their vehicle and have migrated out of California. So I would even argue that there's a lot of Californians that can't stand California. So let's get that out of the way. Basically, the whole reason that people hate van life is because it's California. No, I'm kidding, but that is a real thing.
I think that it's maybe more of a significant reason than I originally thought, and more than most people think. And the reason I say that is traveling around, it's a common go-to joke or diss to say, oh, you're from California, or we don't do that, we're not from California. That it's a go-to joke about California. But upon further questioning, most of the time, the people who say these things and have these negative ideas haven't even visited California. So True. I'm not saying that the thoughts about California are right or wrong. I'm just saying most of the people spitting the venom don't have actual facts.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's true of just about anything we're going to talk about. Facts is a very loose thing in the U.S., as we know. So let's talk about the second thing, and some of this is tied to let's go with the California theme here for a second. The second part of this is economics. The van life scene has been driven by let's put it this way: the number one van is the Sprinter van, right? Mercedes Sprinter van. I see more of those. I mean, obviously there's Ram ProMasters and there's Ford Transits, and then there's other kinds of vans, but Mercedes Sprinters dominate the market. There's no question about it. They're not cheap. So there's two parts of the economic equation here. One is the perception is that if you are a van lifer, that you have money. Okay, so there's a jealousy involved here. So this woman is, irritated that somebody has the good fortune to actually have an online job, and is probably annoyed that they have a Sprinter van that could be, who knows, could be $200,000. And so there's an economic thing where the level of a van lifer tends to be higher or perceived as higher economically than your average American. That's one part of the economic. And the second part of the economic is because they work from a van, the perception is that they're doing work for the wealthy. And this guy actually said this in the article, and it's something that I've thought about as well. Because let's face it, you're not flipping hamburgers, you're not cleaning homes, you're not a plumber, you're not a lot of things if you're working remotely out of your van. You're likely doing online work, which, let's just be honest, largely is involved with corporations or organizations that are pushing finance. It's paper pushing, it's moving things around, it's making money for wealthy people. Let's just call it what it is.
I agree.
So I think that so if you take those things, could be California. It's kind of like we look back at the Beach Boys of this. There was a feeling behind it. So the van life thing is a feeling. It's not real, but it's a feeling, and we all feel like it came from the West Coast, and they're probably wealthier. I mean, oftentimes people will say, "Look, it's mostly white, wealthy people in vans." I mean, that's being super stereotypical. But I mean, if I broke down, 100 vans, I'm gonna hit that mark a good percentage of the time.
Well, that stereotype has historically over decades existed. Originally, the stereotype was, these are bums, these are nomads, but they're the sons and daughters of rich people. That's why they're able to surf all day and drive around in their Volkswagen.
Yep.
So that's absolutely true.
Yep.
But that's not the only people.
No, for sure. Absolutely not. And look, we're being stereotypical here. Obviously, not everybody's in a expensive Mercedes Sprinter van. Not everybody's from California. Not everybody's wealthy. Quite frankly, this woman that writes this letter to the editor or whatever, I mean, I would argue that, although I know a lot of people that do work from their van, there's a lot of people that don't. Whether they're retired, they're simply not working anymore at all, they are temporarily jobless, or they took a hiatus, or, unfortunately, there are people that are, down on their luck. They're homeless. They got thrown out. They had to sell their house, whatever happened. It's the cheapest economical way they could do it. They're trying to survive. So there's a lot of different people out there. And by the way, there's lots of different, ethnic people. There's all sorts of people. Trust me. I met everybody and anybody out in, quote, van life, overland, nomad life, whatever you want to call it. So, but yes, how do we address this? The mainstream probably feels like van lifers are douches.
Mm-hmm. I look at it as an experience that I have just simply as far as Starbucks. There are a lot of people who don't like Starbucks, and it's because of the aura that it originally had, that yuppies went there and upperly mobile people went to this particular coffee place. And it didn't help that the drinks were $5 or $6.
Nope.
So there is generally a disdain by the majority for the things that are not easily acquirable by you.
Yeah.
I've just learned that to be across the board, whether it's coffee, vans, homes, cars, anything. How your wife look.
Yep.
It don't matter.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, that's what's going on here. And I like your reference to Starbucks, because van life is modern day Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I have talked about the difference, and I thought about this the other day. In fact, I was so frustrated yesterday. I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to badmouth some more people here, because that's what we do on this podcast. It's exciting. You and I have talked extensively about the difference between van lifers, overlanders, school bus people, RVers, whatever. And, I was frustrated yesterday because I was looking online. I don't know, I was scanning through Facebook or something, and I'm part of all these different groups, as a lot of people are. And one of them happened to be some schoolie group. Mm-hmm. And I was reading what people had written on this schoolie group, and I was like, I know this sounds terrible, and I'm gonna probably get shot, but man, I tell you, what a group of like dopes. Like, I've never ran into a group of people that seem like they were dopier. Now, I have some friends that have school buses and that live in schoolies, and they're not necessarily like this. But my God, if I had to take a cross section, this is a dopey group. And, they're asking questions online, and you're just scratching your head going, how the hell do you live in a school bus? Because in my view, in our last podcast, we talked about build or buy. Well, the schoolie lifestyle is usually about building. Generally speaking, and we talked about this, you need skill. Mm-hmm. You need like some, a personality type that's going to be a risk taker. And boy, I'll tell you what, this is a group that seems completely contrary to that. So in my opinion, schoolies are one of the most expensive rigs to run, period. And I bet you the perception out there, because we're talking about van life right now, the perception is schoolies are a bunch of deadheads, they're poor, and they're crafty. No, I think it's a bunch of people that just went there because they think it's the cheapest way to go. And I think it's the most expensive route, honestly. You can get into being an RV, shit, you could probably get a van, a cheaper van or an overland rig cheaper than you're going to get into a school bus. By the time you buy, maybe the bus is cheap, but holy hell, by the time you build it up and then you realize it's like, you got an engine seal leak, it's $2,000 here. And it's just, whatever. These are commercial vehicles. This is not to be taken lightly. And the reason I'm going down this tangent here is I have no idea why I'm going down this tangent, actually. No, because there's perceptions out there. Well, and I think that, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that with the schoolie people, I think a majority of them get involved in it more. It symbolizes a group and a lifestyle. Yeah. And they don't think beyond that.
Agreed. And that's the difference. So where I was going with this is that we were talking about van life and people, the public perception of it. I think where you look at schoolie people and you say, oh, kind of deadheads and kind of, hippies, and they just want to live that bus life and all this stuff. I think the public perception of a van lifer is that they are an Instagram star, or they're living that dream and they're trying to be on the social media and they're cutting edge and they're hip and they're, edgy, I guess maybe is a good word too. And I think I think people don't like that.
I believe that's true, but I believe it just comes down to basic jealousy.
Yep.
After you cut through all of the nice political terms and everything, it's jealousy. I camp in a tent and he's camping in a Mercedes Benz. I'm going to a home that's going to cost less than this vehicle they're driving around in. Look at the clothes they have on. Look at the fancy food they're eating. Look at their Apple laptops and their iPhones. And he's got a drone. Yep. It's pure jealousy when you get to the crux of whatever reason you give.
But oftentimes it's choices. Like let's add up all the iPhones and the drones and let's call it even a $200,000 van. I mean, a lot of the people that are moaning and groaning have houses and multiple cars and property and all this other stuff. So it's a choice.
See, I think that there are some like what you described, but the majority of the time, no, they're not that person. Because the person you just described, they've probably looked at one and was like, they've considered buying one and just didn't buy it. The animosity is not there. I'm talking about the people with animosity. Right. There are people who are like, oh, I don't dig van life, but they don't have animosity.
Yeah.
And if you can afford to go get it, you generally don't have animosity.
Nope. Well, there's economic disparity in general, what we're talking about, because like this woman's writing,
Yes.
They're taking up my camp spot, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, I'm going to argue that at this point, you've got to be in the upper middle class to be able to afford to go to a national park. So,
right.
I mean, so this is not just about vans or just about nomads being full-time or working on the road. This is a whole broader discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a jealousy, a fight going on about public space, public land, public campgrounds, as she referenced, because of, look, resources are finite.
So, Mike, I can make my point about this real clear by just asking you a simple question.
Okay.
And I bet you we have the same identical. I know we have the same identical answer because we've talked about it. When you're at a gas station or you stop somewhere and you're parked and there's other vehicles around and they see your vehicle, it's, you got a big vehicle, and they usually come over to your vehicle to ask questions. What's the most common question you always get?
Well, after whether or not it can drive underwater, usually it's how much does it cost?
Get that too. But I have witnessed they start asking you, how were you able to get the vehicle and how are you able to drive around like this?
Correct.
Because I get the same
Which
question.
has to do with how much does it cost? How do you get to do this? Like people, especially on the side of my truck, they read Drive the Globe and they're like, oh, is that your job? What is that all about? How do you do that?
And I know you can't read minds, but when people start inquiring like that, just your intuition from the tone and cadence of their voice, is it a purely curious question that they're asking? Or does it seem kind of like there's a little venom behind it? Like, so what are you doing? Which one majority of the time?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I would definitely say you get some of that for sure. I mean, there's absolutely. Yeah.
So driving around in a Mercedes, anything is going to make that times 10.
Yep. Yeah.
But it does not help that there are a lot of douchey van lifers out here that do recognize, I'm driving around in a $200,000 vehicle and I've got several $1,000s worth of bikes on the back and I've got tens of thousands of dollars of gear. So I have met those people, so I'm not going to pretend like they don't exist. There's a lot of them.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them in the Overland community. There's a lot of them in all of these communities. Any kind of hobby where, like, let's take photography. In a photography club, the guy who has all of the $10,000 and $20,000 lenses, he hangs out with the guys with the $10,000 and $20,000 lenses. The beginner who just has a camera and a 50 millimeter, he hangs out with those guys. It's the same. That's my opinion.
Agreed. And whether it's van life or Overland or whatever, I mean, some of the problem is, and here's the other thing. So some of it's jealousy, some of it's a respect thing. So I think when people look at it and they say, well, I'm jealous because they get to work full time on the road and they can make their own hours and they can, be on a beautiful, vista on the side of a canyon. And I have to be in my warehouse and, I can't, we don't have any windows and, so there's a jealousy thing. But then the other problem is that some of these people that work hard legitimately and have rigs. So let's compare this for a second. Some of these people that are maybe moaning and groaning, they have their own rigs. They may have Overland rigs, or they maybe even have vans or whatever, but they only can go out on the weekend or whatever. And in some cases, some of this comes up to conservation and mindset. So let's talk about that too for a second, because they're probably upset because their feeling is that these wealthy Vanlifers are destroying it for the rest of us, and are more concerned about their job and less concerned about their impact on their surroundings. It's a fair statement. And they're utilizing the surroundings and the conservation areas more, right? Because if I'm in my house, I'm obviously in an established area that's been deeded and is okay, and it's got a septic or sewer system and water and whatever. So these nomads are out using resources and traveling and potentially impacting. Like, this is a theme for me, and we've talked about this. Is off tangent again, but we've talked about this on other podcasts. What the impact is on the environment and how we can fix things and trail closures and all this other stuff. But like last night I was watching TV and I'm watching the new Toyota 4Runner ad. I mean, they should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, holy crap. If you buy a Toyota at this point, you should be dead to me. Like, honestly, like their ad is them doing donuts in like this. It looks like in Utah, they're doing donuts and ripping up dirt and stuff. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? So What do you think that guy that's going to go buy that Toyota, what do you think he's going to do on day one? He's going to take that 4Runner and he's going to rip it across Moab. He's going to rip up some trail. And then we all going to wonder, oh, geez, they're shutting it down to motorized vehicles. Oh, geez, I wonder why. Thank you, Toyota USA. What a piece of garbage. Like, you could put that out there on this pod. Like, you guys, shame on Toyota. I am mortified. Mortified. I don't even want it. Don't even, if you're a friend of mine, don't even tell me you're buying this Toyota. I like you should switch to Jeep or something. That's embarrassing. Honestly,
Jeep used to do that.
Supposedly, they're signed on to tread lightly and whatnot. Are you?
Wow.
Bullshit. 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 That is garbage.
Something's going on with your sound, bro. Did you disconnect the?
Hold on.
I agree with everything that you said, bro. It does not help though that there are a lot of Vanlifers that feed right into the stereotypes. I wish that I could defend them more. I mean, we both know Vanlifers that are great people and are not anything like what we're describing. So we don't think they're all like this. So let's be clear on that. But a lot of the stereotypes about them is true. I remember I was up in Alaska. Yeah, I can't hear you, bro. Okay.
Now.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I destroyed my good microphone here by spilling water all over it. So we'll see if that dries out.
Wow.
Yeah. So Toyota owes me a microphone.
So where were we, bro?
I was moaning and groaning about Toyota and their ad, but ripping up. But that's a legitimate point about people talking about full-time nomads. They're using resources and potentially impacting nature or areas with the ability now to have Starlink and whatnot and work remotely in your Sprinter van overlooking a cliff in Utah somewhere. You're gonna impact that wilderness more than the guy that's moaning and groaning about, he's got to work in this factory. So I think there's resentment on top of jealousy. I think there's resentment potentially from weekend warriors, or people that are not full-time doing this, that you're screwing up their world by your ability to work full-time on the road.
And because they think that, you're upwardly mobile or affluent, a lot of times lower income people, their mentality about a lot of things is, whenever it's something that both of us can have or use or enjoy, their mentality is, well, you've got money, you can go do something else. So don't take this less expensive thing away from me, or don't challenge me or compete with me for these resources. But the reality is, it's not a ethics or a moral thing. It's just what's fair. We all have access to it, and you don't deserve it because you make less than me. But that's the mentality. That's a lot of the mentality too. It's like, they could go somewhere else. Take that van to Aspen or something.
Sure.
Why are you at this state park with me? So it's a lot. It's a lot of negative thoughts about it that generally reflect back to the person that has that disdain.
It was an interesting article. I was a little, to be honest with you, I was a little surprised to see it in Outside magazine, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought he did a pretty good job of writing the article.
Yeah, because he couldn't go all the way in the way he wanted to. He kind of told it like it is, but he backed off.
Yeah, he could. I mean, he's not like us. He can't just say, California sucks, and Toyota sucks too.
Because he basically, in a roundabout way, he did say, he did at one point use the word jealousy, but then he went a whole paragraph explaining away why he said that.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I just think that here's the problem. I think there's reality to it. Do I think that there's not going to be somebody lobbying to try to, and I have no idea how you would do this, but to try to shut down people that are working from the road, from camping in places or something? I don't know. I mean, it's definitely happening on the other side. Corporations are trying to shut it down like mad hell. Mm-hmm. They want people to work in the office now again after the pandemic.
Well, Yosemite just recently announced that they are going to be having Wi-Fi in a majority of the park.
Huh.
And there have been initiatives similar to this over the last decade at different national parks. I remember they were talking about doing that at Glacier, but they were only talking about doing it in certain parks. Right. They were talking about doing it at a lot of different national parks. But the thing about it is, the reason I bring it up is the connection is, there's a mentality that some people have that I want, when I go outside, for it to be a primitive experience. When I'm in the outdoors, I want it to be a primitive experience. Right. And all you got to do is turn your stuff off. Right. Some people, they're not happy about their ideology unless you're on board with it too. And you're doing the same thing.
There's super truth to that, because I can't tell you how many places I've been camped where some guy comes in and I can just hear him huffing and puffing because he camped next to me and probably a dozen other people, and every one of us has got our Starlink up. And, we eat our dinner and we can go to bed, and I can lay in my bed and watch HBO or whatever. And they're just like, this isn't camping. This is not what we're supposed to be doing here. And yeah, he wants me to be like him.
And it doesn't matter, but the reality is, y'all let a
we're allowed to say that. Is this? Yeah. No, there's no FCC on the podcast.
Yeah, you're at a campground, so you're not really being primitive either. So cut all the grandiose stuff.
That's right.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
After all is said and done, you're on a concrete pad with your vehicle.
Just like the next guy.
You got a little fire pit made out of metal. Shut up.
I think that when it comes down to it, we all have to just get along. Like, who gives a crap whether or not they're in a Sprinter van or I'm driving my Overland rig or you're in an RV? or you're camped on the back of a Subaru. It doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. And any one of us can have or not have as much technology as we want. And good for the people, in my opinion, good for the people that can work on the road. Because if you can work on the road and you've designed your life around that ability, to me, you've won something. You know,
that's admirable. You
Exactly.
set out a goal and you're achieving it.
Now, let's all admit that 100% of the people cannot do that. Right? We still need dentists and doctors and attorneys that have to be, you know, in an office or in court or something. And we need, you know, a plumber, an electrician. I mean, there are definitely many people that cannot do this.
And if it makes people feel any better, we know a bunch of these people. A lot of them are so far from rich. I'm talking about they don't know how they're going to make the next payment on the vehicle. I'm talking about they ain't got health insurance. The whole gambit of issues that you have.
That's
so
right.
A lot of the jealousy is unwarranted because a lot of those people are hustling harder than you are.
And let's be honest, you don't know that the 100,000 or the 200,000 that they spent on their Sprinter van, that might have been the last amount of money that they had, and they scrapped everything together. They sold a house. They sold, who knows what they did to get that. They went through their piggy bank jar. So
I've interviewed hundreds of these guys, and that's almost always the case. Yeah. Let's go into some of the basic demographics. It's usually like someone over 50. It'll be a single woman. She's gotten some income from either her husband dying, from a divorce, or something like that.
Yeah, because let's remind everybody here, from the van life scene is more skewed towards women than men. A lot of
people don't. Yeah,
don't know that. It's true. Way more women than men.
Mm-hmm. That's a podcast we need to do. That would be a great one about the reasons behind and the mentality of the single women who are in the van life.
Yep.
I don't even want to expose some of those thoughts. We'll just have to do it.
Sure.
That would be a great one. But we know a bunch of these people, and a lot of them are doing worse than the people who are not in the van. So there's nothing to be jealous about, really. A lot of those people are scratching to survive. It looks glossy on the outside, but once you start digging in, you realize, oh, they're struggling.
Yep. And by the way, this crosses over to Overland. I mean, I use the words interchangeably anyways. Van life, Overland, nomad, RVer, it's all the same. It's at the end of the day, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, because there are van lifers who are far more of an overlander, in my opinion, than people who consider themselves overlanders.
Well, I consider myself a van lifer, as an example. Like, if I'm speaking to somebody that is sort of outside the realm of this world that you and I might be in,
mm-hmm.
They ask me, well, I'm like full-time on the road, like van lifer. I'll say van lifer. I won't say overlander. Most of the world have no idea what the hell that means. So it's easier to say van lifer or full-time RVer or something like that. It's just easier to say. Mm-hmm. I think it's all the same anyways.
Yeah, I agree with that. So do you think there's a solution for this? Do you think it's going to get worse? Do you think things are going to get better?
It's a good thing, a good question, because we've talked about the economics and where we are in the state of the economy here in the U.S. So, we have an election coming up in November, and, elections, typically something happens. Don't need to get into it too much, but I would say in this one, something's going to happen. I think it's going to depend on which way the economy goes. If we go back, if it gets worse, I think that to be honest, I think you're going to see more people in vans if the economy gets worse. And that's maybe contrary to what this article's talking about, because it's sort of portraying, or at least the perception is that they're wealthy. So I would argue, as you just pointed out, that that's probably not the case. So I think if the economy gets worse, I think the prices of vans and vehicles and trucks and schoolies and whatnot will continue to drop, because they're dropping off now. I think more people will be able to afford them, and more people will desperately have to afford them. I have a couple friends right now that I know they're going to end up losing their house, and it's just it's a shitty situation. Gas, energy, food, everything costs more. Whatever, long short, people get themselves into trouble with their homes. I think more of those people are going to end up in a van or a schoolie or a RV or whatnot. So I think it's going to grow. I think the situation and I think they're going to try to find gig jobs where they can work remotely, because they've been forced into remote because that's all they can afford. So maybe some of them used to be, I'll give you an example. Maybe somebody was a school teacher where they had to work in a school, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they got to end up moving into a van. Now they've got to find something different to do. So now they can't teach anymore. Maybe they can, do something online. Maybe it's less money. And that's part of the other problem that's going on, is that, you can look at the unemployment rate all you want. I mean, the unemployment rate that's listed in the United States is basically a crock of shit.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean
there's so many people who aren't looking for jobs anymore.
Yeah. They're not looking, or they're unemployed, but they're super underemployed or super underpaid. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. So, I mean, I think what you're seeing is actually prices going up and income going down.
If you have 100 people and there are 100 jobs, it sounds like that's a good economy.
Right.
But if only 40 of those people are working those 100 jobs, because they're not jobs that can pay their bills, so they're working 2 or 3 jobs, and the other 60 people don't have a job, those aren't good numbers. And that's what the numbers don't expose.
That's right.
There's a lot of people working 2 and 3 jobs, and there's a whole lot of people ain't working no job, and it's not because they're not looking.
Yep.
And you'll have people say
they're only working one job, and it's only paying 40% of their bills, and they don't have a second job.
Right.
So they're,
It's sad. I do believe that the economy is going to get worse, because I don't look at America. I look at the world to make that decision. And I believe that we are headed toward war. And I have something personal that happened in the last couple of days that kind of makes me feel it a little bit more. There's a big uproar in my family because I have a nephew who is been given an assignment, and he's not allowed to say what he's doing or where he's in the military, where he's going or what he's doing. And when he was telling his father, he was, from what they say, he was crying. So, and he's never given off the impression, at least to me, he's not a crybaby type of dude. So it must be something he know that he ain't telling them. And there are other people that I know, not family, but they have military personnel who are off somewhere or headed off somewhere, and they don't know what's going on. So I think that this is all the steps leading up to war. If it's not, it'll be one of the rare. It'll be because of some last minute meeting of the minds or something like that. But the current direction things are going, it is a setup for war. So I believe,
if we had a war clock, you got to be at 2 minutes to midnight. I mean, you unless you're living in a cave. I mean, look at what's going on out there.
Hey, people look at me like I'm a conspiracy theorist when I say that.
Well, I mean, between Ukraine and Middle East and Israel and Yemen and Sudan and Nigeria, and I mean, I could go on and on and on. parts of South America, Ecuador. I mean, there's no end to conflict. China, North Korea. Where do you start and end?
And these things, you can't always look at what's black and white or what's right in front of your face. Like you mentioned all of those places in the Middle East, right? Well, that don't mean that's who we're going to have a war with. That's typically when a major power, especially one that's considered an empire, is at its vulnerableness. So that's when you'll have somebody like a China or somebody come in and be like, hey, this is a great time to attack them. And they already got balloons flying over. It's been a stat for years that they hit us like during the course of a day, every single day, cyber attacks like within the thousands every single day.
Oh,
so I see us going to war, and I see the economy going bad. So if the economy is bad, you see people still hopping in Mercedes-Benz vans.
What I see is the used market is going to continue to soften because there were so many made during the pandemic.
Yes.
So many people got into it, and there's going to be inevitably, there's always people getting out. It wasn't for them, whatever circumstances change. So I think there's going to be, the other thing is you got to look at, since this isn't, quote, I suppose, an Overland podcast, although you might think we're turning into Joe Rogan, but
go ahead.
But no, because it's an Overland podcast, think about this. The RV industry is getting into the Overland market. And the RV industry
in a big way
excels at doing things inexpensively, right? That's the gig. You can go buy a 25-foot travel trailer for 25 grand. It's about $1,000 a foot. It's $25,000 for a 25-foot travel trailer. Pretty damn cheap.
I agree.
So, and now they've recognized that overlanding is a market. Van life is a market. So, Winnebago, all of these Jayco, all of these companies have gotten involved with trailers, Class B Sprinter vans or Class B vans. Now they're starting to get into Class C Overland stuff. Even look at our friend Candy that got a Class C motorhome and then did a 4-wheel drive conversion on it. So she's doing that as a consumer, as an aftermarket person. Do you not think that somebody's going to be doing this commercially in big volume soon? Yeah, they are.
I agree somewhat. This is the part I'm fuzzy in. So the economy goes bad. Yes, the van life, I can see that as an alternative in that type of economy. But we've also talked about how governments, cities, state, municipalities are all coming up with HOAs, are all coming up with different laws and regulations and stipulations that are making it harder and harder. There's less square footage. There's less acres of land for people to actually put these vans on.
We're going back.
And there's going to be less. And there's going to be less.
Here we go, everybody. Get ready. You guys listen here. California. We're going back right to the beginning of the podcast. Okay. What you're saying, Phil, is absolutely true. But let's pick on California some more. San Francisco, San Diego, look at LA, homeless populations, people camped on train tracks, on the street, on sidewalks, crapping throughout San Francisco. It's a hellhole. I'm not suggesting that HOAs and people can't make rules and no, you can't park your van and Telluride and stuff. What happens when the economy is so shit that so many people bought these things and they're just going, I don't know what to do. I'm parking at Telluride. I'm going to poop on the street. It's only a matter of time you realize that some of this. So
you feel like there'll be so many that they can't stop them? Is that what you're saying?
Yep. I think it's already happened. I think that there's a very thin line in some cases in the van life nomad world. There's a very thin line between what we're talking about here and camped under a bridge in San Francisco. I think there's a gray area there. There are people that could go either way. And I think
so we're headed towards slums then. Because okay, let's say I can agree. Let's say I agree with everything you say, and I kind of do. But we already have like mass homelessness, and I've seen what they do. Nice neighborhoods, they ain't having that.
That's right.
A couple of years back, I think it was the first year of COVID or something like that, one of those encampments was in our city, like in the parking lot where a major mountain is, and people go to climb the mountain and they do skydiving and stuff like that. They cut that out quick.
Yeah, but here's the difference. I agree with you. As I'm joking when I said people are going to camp in Telluride and poop on the street. But with Starlink and interconnectivity now, think about this. What happens when you and I camped up in outside of Mexican Hat, as an example, in Utah? So it's BLM land. Okay. So what's going to stop a bunch of them from setting up camp villages on BLM?
That's precisely what I was addressing in the beginning. There is currently at all levels of government, different rules and regulations being pushed, being lobbied for. What's to say that BLM land will always be free? It's still not as free as it used to be.
But here's the difference, is it's harder to stop these people. Look, when you got neighbors that are millionaires, they're going to be like, I know, you can't park there. Whatever they got to do, they pay off the police. Those people are not going to be able to stay there. Nobody's parking in downtown Telluride. It's not going to happen.
I agree.
But there are no neighbors on the BLM land. There aren't a bunch of wealthy people to bitch and moan. So what's going to happen is very similar to cities that are fighting homeless, like San Francisco and Austin, Texas, and Denver, Colorado, and places where it's just, they've kind of lost control. They're not wealthy areas, though. They're typically downtown, urban, slumish areas, and it just lost control. And there's no wealthy people to say, put their foot down and go, forget about it. And the government, hands tied, possibly a liberal government, feels bad for them, whatever the scenario is. It just happens. And now we're 10 years into it, and there's still people camped in the same place in San Francisco that were 10 years ago. It's illegal. The law's been on the books. Nothing's happening.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just suggesting that BLM land or national parks or whatever, it's just the government. There's no people to complain.
I feel like there's fewer people, but you got to realize I do a lot of this BLM stuff, and people complain. We're constantly fighting for trails and to be able to use the BLM land now. That would just give them a clear-cut reason to say, oh no, stop.
The problem is that I'm sure people in San Francisco complain, and I'm sure that whatever is happening is they're breaking the law, but there isn't enough effort or enough money or enough whatever to get rid of them.
So basically it'll be an out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So all of a sudden,
there's another factor that about this that I'm not including, but I'm thinking it is, I believe if we reach a point where we're in war and they're not about to let a lot of healthy individuals just sit around in their vans.
No.
That's what I think.
But I agree.
They already don't want you to. They spent the last 2 years getting you back to work.
Yep.
They don't want the government does not want a bunch of people not working.
Yeah, I know. And a war economy is one where everybody's got to work. So I get all that. I get it. It's going to be interesting to see what. I mean, I know we're painting a Mad Max picture here a little bit, but I mean, look at. I've driven through parts of Quartzsite where it's kind of happened already, where people have set up rogue camps. It's been going on for years, where people just go to Quartzsite, Arizona camp. There's a zillion RVs and people, and then one guy gets a Starlink and they all tap into it, and now they attract more people that can hang out there. And it almost becomes like communes in a way. They share resources, right? So it's not staggering to believe that couldn't happen on other BLM land or national park land, or, where there just aren't neighbors.
The Mad Max reference that you made, I already feel like I think like that. I do think like things are Mad Max. I do think like it's a dystopian world. You know why? Because in my lifetime, it has shown me that it is that. There was a time that I did not think like that, but in my lifetime, there's been an attack on the United States that killed thousands of people. Right?
Yeah,
in my lifetime, there has been a major plague that affected the world. So there's too much proof that we do live in that kind of world, and it can get down to those levels of being Mad Max. I remember when everybody was being stationary in the beginning of the COVID, I continued traveling all over the United States. And it was like driving through one of those movies, like the one with Will Smith, where he's the only person in the world.
Same with me.
So
I would drive and I would stop at places and I couldn't believe there were no people.
So that's my point, is that it's not conspiracy theory. It's not being pessimistic or any of those things. There's proof in the pudding that these things can and have happened.
Yep. I agree.
So that's my advice for today, is you better start thinking Mad Max like.
Apparently I have a zombie apocalypse truck, people tell me. So maybe I'm all set up for this.
Bro, I make the reference all the time now, is when I was growing up and I was being steered toward what to do as far as career and education and taking care of myself and having a family and all these responsibilities. It was ingrained in us that, okay, you want to save, you want to have a surplus. And when you're deciding how big that surplus needs to be so that you can retire or whatever, you need to include the chance that prices will go up and that there may be some kind of calamity that occurs or whatever. Well, in my lifetime, we've had like 3 or 4 of them. It's not even an unusual thing anymore.
No, I would be prepared to have no financial system altogether.
That's one of the things me and my wife we debate all the time, because she thinks some of the I'm not a prepper, but I'm prepared.
Right. Yeah.
And some of those things look like just a waste of investment in time that I've done, but let the ish hit the fan, and I will be a hero.
Well, so guys, you obviously had an hour with us on a podcast talking about van life and the perspective of what we feel about people that live full-time on the road and work on the road. And we've covered it all.
Mike, if you agree with me, agree with me. But if you don't. But I just want to say to the audience, I know sometimes they're like, okay, they brought me here to talk about this subject, and then they go here and they go here and they go all over the place. But for a world traveler, for a world overlander, whatever you want to title yourself, if you're crossing borders and you're trying to live your life as a traveler, there's no way that you can separate your travel from the politics. It's impossible.
Totally agree. You got to know what's going on in the world everywhere.
Yes.
It's your responsibility not only to know where you live, but everywhere else. Your job is more complicated than your normal person that has a 9-to-5 job, that goes to work, goes home, watches TV, makes dinner, goes to bed. They got to worry about the politics of their area and the country. You got to worry about the politics of everything.
Yes. Yes. And I hope people understand that that's a kind of a theme in a lot of our podcasts. Like when we were talking about the bridge that fell, that affects travelers, and not just because you can't get on the boat. We talked about commodities and how you look at container ships containers and how many there are and where they are and stuff. All those politics, economics, all of those affect your travel. And you better get learned on it.
The first place you're going to feel it is when you go to the fuel station.
Yes. Bro. I don't know who I was talking to about this. I think it was you. I remember I used to take, when I was younger, I would take $20 on the weekend, fill my tank, and I'd have stuff to do all weekend. I'd have change left over from my $20.
$20, you and I can't even go to McDonald's and get fries.
If I put $20 in my tank, I would need to go back to the gas station to get more gas before I go home.
That's right.
That ain't nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, bro. I would say we've had some dreary podcasts where we're talking about the real. This is probably one of the dreariest ones.
No, this was positive. It's all good. Besides, I mean, how many podcasts do I destroy a good microphone because I got so frustrated with a Toyota commercial? So, I mean, this is crazy. This is it right here.
So, Mike, you got anything else you want to say? I got you on the mic. Is there anything else you want to say?
We're good. Till next week.
Yeah, this was a good one. All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.